Hello, my name is Robert Miller and this is workshop number 8. The picture at the front. Now every workshop has an image. You should be able to see that, the thumbnail sketch of what this is about in an image, an artifact. And it's a gorilla. It's actually a gorilla here in St. Louis Zoo. It has a name in St. Louis Zoo. Everybody calls it that. But when I think about this gorilla, he's the dominant alpha in the zoo among all the gorillas. I think of Ishmael. And why do I think of Ishmael as a name instead of the actual name is because of Daniel Quinn's book. And Daniel Quinn wrote this amazing book called Ishmael. And it's about a conversation between two creatures. One is human and the other is a gorilla. And the academic human is shocked to discover this gorilla can communicate. And he's really excited until the gorilla communicates and begins to unpack a level of ancient knowing that their shared ancestry, and as a cousin telling a cousin, you're making a mess of the house. And the whole book is about this conversation. So when I create a gorilla and I show people, say, oh, so we're going to do somatic intelligence. This is the workshop about my instincts. And I go, no, this is about my culture. The second of the 3 programs in my success. So if you're doing it, it's red and it's about conflict. And it's the subconscious way we have of knowing where we live in one mindset. And now there are many of these mindsets, but we picked extrinsic and intrinsic, and we unpacked how that these mindsets value different things, and they have consequences. They have sequential consequences because I start here, I end up here, and I create this cycle, both virtuous and problematic. And like in the book in Ishmael, what we discover are there are bars, limits to our mindset, to our culture. And what we think of as just all encompassing is actually limited and localized. And so my extrinsic mindset, let me show you. Now, if you were one of my paid clients and we were doing my culture, you would see my extrinsic angel. And he sits here on this side of my office screen. And so on the other side of the monitor where I work, this guy is just awesome. He's armored. Forget Brene Brown on armoring. This guy is tooled up to fight. He's my extrinsic. He wants to be respected by achieving results and exceeding expectation. And so he cares deeply about extrinsic success. He's a performer. And that's my mindset. That's primarily where I come from, is I'm an extrinsically oriented person. Now, I was a minister and a missionary for a really long time. And in that world, most people are intrinsic. And this is my intrinsic angel. He's always showing his butt. And he doesn't mind being vulnerable. And he loves Brene Brown's book. All of her books. And he is very comfortable with unconditional acceptance. He deeply cares about being human and allowing other people around him to be human. And it's about being healthy and unconditional acceptance. And it too has both a virtuous and problematic cycle of a sequence. And in my culture, we go through the 4 steps and the 4 vehicles to get us to different places inside that sequence. Why Ishmael? These 2 angels, as it were, inhabit 2 worlds that think of themselves as global when they're actually local. That there are massive constraints and unintended consequences that often lead to conflict. You might notice my really nice sweater, or as my wife would call, an old man cardigan. It's my Irish cardigan. And it's deep wool, it's thick, it's warm. And this iron cardigan, you know, on the coast of Ireland where I grew up, it's cold. And it's not just cold like I lived in Munich, Germany, right beside the Alps. It is cold there and a lot of snow, and it's a lot colder per temperature on the thermometer than it is in Ireland. But I once went from Munich, 3-4 feet of snow and really deep minuses, flew to Ireland where it was in the positives. It was above freezing, and yet it was significantly colder as a feeling. Okay, so we learned over generations to create these really warm woolen clothing to help insulate in this damp, because the damp gets all the way through. So Gore-Tex doesn't really help. In insulation, it has to be layered and natural. Wool is really good. So I learned from my ancestors, oh, that's really great. This is an Ishmael knowing. It's generational. Now I'm going to say it again. My cardigan is an Ishmael knowing. Something I carry within me. I know this is good. And while it doesn't fit where I live right now, and it's very Irish looking, and old man looking, as my wife would say, who's American, it actually is something I carry around ancestral knowledge. This is how to stay warm. Now, I live in a different place. I live in Missouri, and it is not as damp and is much drier in the winter, so it's kind of less comfortable here because of the different environment. And so ancestral knowing, while you stay there and you only interact with there, it feels global. Everyone knows, and it feels universally true because everyone agrees. It's just when you take the cardigan to Missouri in the winter, it's not quite as versatile. It's not quite as practical. It doesn't work as well because not everything agrees. And so my ancient Ishmael knowing of cardigan doesn't work. In the cultural paradox of mindset, we too often imagine we're living in a global context when we're living in a local context that is subjective and limited. And we need to wake up within us an Ishmael. Because you do not have, while you're doing my culture, an Ishmael coach who can grab an angel and stimulate within you ancient knowing that for eons we have had literature, philosophy, religion about extrinsic and intrinsic paradoxical conflict, where people try to globalize a preference for extrinsic being respected. And my wife will tell you, not only have I got terrible taste in clothes and she doesn't want me to wear my Irish cardigan, but I would rather be respected than accepted. And that's a sort of cheat sheet how to recognize an extrinsically operating person. They're unaware of the barriers and the limits and the cage of their mindset. They think everybody should want to be respected. And the golden rule kicks in here. You will treat people at the very best you can the way you treat yourself. And so I try to treat people with the idea that we all want to be respected. And then when I come up against my intrinsic friends, they get hurt because they don't want to have to earn my respect. They want to be unconditionally accepted. And so they're intrinsic. They're not trying to achieve these giant goals to earn respect. They're being healthy, and they have a different lifestyle, and they have a different value system, and a different sequence of activity and thinking because they know a different way. And it works in the context of where they are. And when they're only with their own people, it feels global and not local. It doesn't feel constrained, it feels universal. The conflict comes because we are delusional. We are deluded, we are wrong in believing that what we believe and know is universal. It is not global, it is rather local. And the cardigan that I know is true and works in the context of where I'm from stops working in Missouri. In my culture, you get into conflict when you're forced to leave your mindset and you interact with someone at work, in your marriage, in your family, in your neighborhood, and you clash because these two angels do not live beside each other. They live apart. They're paradoxically mutually exclusive positions. They cannot stay together. So what you're not looking for is peace. You're looking for ceasefire in my culture, okay? We're not going to get into all of the programmatic. I want to unpack an Ishmael idea. Here's my cup. If you've watched videos with me, you may have noticed my cup. It's got tea in it. There are roots, it's a tree, it's very pretty. And when I bought it, I asked who made it, because it was obviously a potter. It's obviously handmade. It's not a factory. It's not produced. And the man said, oh, wow, it's a wonderful older lady who's a potter living off the grid in Missouri. No electricity, no running water. She goes, gets her own water, and she lives off the grid intentionally. Well, that's a really ancient way of living. I'm intrigued. I love my cup in part because of who made it. And and you probably know, we'll talk about this in another workshop, my office has a lot of objects in it that look really interesting. And my cup is just another one. My cardigan is just another one. It reminds me, these are imbued with significance. So we'll talk about that as well in another workshop. But you want to wake up your Ishmael, who will help you understand that what you think of as global mindset, everyone knows, is actually quite localized and has very deep constraints that have unintended consequences on others, conflicted, that they don't like, they don't want. And so the conversation with your Ishmael, you need to wake up, needs to be embodied. And that's where the exercises in the workbooks of put your dominant hand on your chest, close your eyes and breathe and feel for that, is waking up Ishmael. And it's bringing out this cultural awareness that what you think of as global is actually local. Now, this will work for my leadership, my life, my now, and my room, that you have an Ishmael within you, a genetic, generational wisdom of ancient, off the grid, that you can wake up and help you understand that how you operate as a mindset, your value system, is a localized one, not a globalized one. And that you ought to ask questions and be curious about the other, with the idea that their localized system is probably also thought of as globalized. And then in that is the unintended conflict, the unintended destruction. And so we need to understand the other, that they too are mistakenly thinking that where they come from is true, and localized, not localized, but globalized. And they want to fix you, not find you. Wake up your Ishmael, because I am not going to be there when you're studying this. Remember now, you definitely want to be using your hands. Either print it off on paper, use a pen, or use a Remarkable. You know, we need to wake up and be there, and within the waking up is an Ishmael. And you have an Ishmael within you. Everyone does. You carry within you ancient knowledge. Wake it up, it will tell you where you're living localized when you're thinking in globalized. Thank you very much.